Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys. The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is a Candyman edition. R.I.P. Today, we're ranking these Candyman movies. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man who wants to throw the bees at me. What has he got? The bees? Or the bees in the dog's mouth? When they bite you, they shoot bees at you? Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello, Tom.
Hey, brothers and sisters, y'all know what carnival means in Latin? Well, the kingfish went to the good school, so he can tell you all about it. Carnival, farewell to the flesh. That's what it means. I like that a lot. Farewell to the flesh.
I have questions.
Well, one of the best ways to crowbar your title into your movie
That's amazing.
is to have a surprisingly erudite DJ translate it for you.
Doesn't he ask at the end, do you still have your flesh?
He's got a lot of interesting
like that?
He's got a lot of interesting patter. It's how you know that it's a movie made between 1990 and 1995 is that it's the movie's linked together by a DJ voiceover.
I couldn't understand why this person was like the linchpin for this movie. And then I gotta tell you, I was totally shocked to actually see him appear in the Mardi Gras parade. That very much surprised me. I didn't think we were going to ever see him.
I didn't think we were ever going to see him, and I definitely didn't think that when he appeared, he would be what appeared to be Caucasian.
Right.
Maybe I'm a racist, and if I am, I'm living in the right country, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I was imagining Samuel L. Jackson and Do the Right Thing.
Right.
Which is the derivation of this this device.
I have so many notes that say the Creole man is back.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's at the very least he's racially ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the actor's name is Gomez, which doesn't help with the racial ambiguity, especially when you factor in what happens in the Day of the Dead.
Correct. Yeah.
I have a lot of questions about cultural appropriation.
These movies seem to latch on to different forms of cultural appropriation in a way that almost seems like a fetish.
Yeah, and I mean, I was surprised to learn today that the director of Farewell to the Fresh is also a Caucasian gentleman.
Yeah, because on IMDb, he does not have a picture. And because of also the ambiguity of his first name, which is Turi.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Did you say Farewell to the Flesh or?
Farewell to the Flesh.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I was thinking of the next one. But.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't look him up yet.
I was trying to look him up and there's no picture. And I thought to myself, I don't even know if this is a man or a woman. Maybe that shows my ignorance about the different cultures' first names. But finally I found that it was a man, and he too also appeared to be white. I thought, okay. Because it felt like a movie directed by a white man, and that's why I was curious.
That's interesting that the both sequels are white people appropriating the histories and cultures of people of color.
Yeah.
And that's also the theme of both of the movies and this franchise in general.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. I have to say, not to give away too many of my feelings about Candyman, open parenthesis 3, close parenthesis, Day of the Dead, but I didn't feel like I needed to look up that director. I didn't. I'm never. I thought I'm never going to use that information.
That's the consummate professional I am. I'm just going to use the information
Completely.
for this and this only. That I recognized. But I thought, let me do my due diligence.
I began to realize that the director of Farewell to the Flesh, Bill Condon, may not be African American when I saw how many Twilight movies he directed. I thought there's no way that is an African American if he directed that many Twilight movies.
Right. But I was also kind of astonished to see that it was Bill Condon, because I know him as what I'm going to call a real director. He
is very much a real director.
I knew that he had made movies that I actually knew.
Yeah.
And that was a surprise to me when I...
And that's
even when
one
I just
of the
first,
big differences.
Yeah, saw
between
him.
these
Yeah,
movies.
it is. And I know that he has... talking about Bill Condon, he has won an Academy Award. Now, not...
For Kinsey?
No, it was writing for Chicago, the screenplay.
Oh, interesting.
And then he, of course, goes on to direct Dreamgirls.
Another great black historical story. It's not exactly the Cotton Club, is it?
But he also... I was wondering if he got nominated as a director, but he also won a second Oscar for writing Gods and Monsters.
Oh, Gods and Monsters, yes.
Yeah.
He's no slouch.
And that was one where I thought, that turned into kind of a dark horse prestige movie. Maybe he got nominated as a director for that, but he did not.
Well, that's a question that I think we have to answer. Is Candyman, open parentheses, 2, close parentheses, Farewell to the Flesh, a dark horse prestige movie? I have some thoughts.
Okay. I'm interested to hear them.
We'll get there.
We'll wait for now.
We have some business to do
to take care of.
Well, I mean, you mentioned this in your introduction, but I want to get two things out of the way. The first is, how do we refer to both the title and the titular character of this movie without becoming one of those hubristic white people
right.
who say the name of the titular character 5 times in a mirror to prove that he doesn't exist, and then end up with a cook through their aorta seconds later? Because, we've got form from our Freddy versus Jason coverage of coming up with Scottish play style euphemisms.
Yeah.
For titles that we don't want to say, with the Sleepy Time Killer.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of suggestions.
The B-boy killer.
Yeah. Well, I wanted. Well, I soft pitched it to you when I sent you that text saying I have now seen both of the B movies.
Yeah.
So I was wondering whether we should, without I don't think people are going to mistake our coverage for the. Jerry Seinfeld.
That was my first question. Are people going to start thinking about Jerry Seinfeld?
It's not a salute to bestiality like that movie is, so I thought we might get away with that. And then, how do we refer to the titular character? I thought just Tony Todd with hair. Because I can't think of any other movie where
based on our Friday the 13th coverage, I think we could call him the real Tony Todd.
Yes, exactly. He's not Tony Todd from Jason X.
No.
That's for sure. But of course, I was thinking about all of this in a comedic vein, and then towards the end of last week, when I'd finished watching both of the B movies, I started to take the idea of a curse more seriously.
Yes.
Because in the same week that I watched both of these movies, Trump was reelected to the presidency, and at the end of the week, Tony Todd died. So
it was bad omens all around.
Yeah, it occurs both in the general and in the particular. So I really don't want to fuck around and find out what happens if I keep saying the title of this movie and or the titular character.
You know what's amazing to me is that, like, when you first kind of brought up that idea, I thought, don't be ridiculous. Of course we can say the words candy and man. And then I thought, I
like what you did there. That's clever.
I'm falling into the exact trap that like 93 different characters fall into in these movies.
Yeah.
And every time it happens, I think to myself, well, stop being stupid. Just don't say it.
Yeah.
Just err on the side of caution.
Yeah, it's no one no one learns the lesson.
Never.
Especially those of a paler complexion.
Well, do we ever?
And a certain socioeconomic status seem to really have trouble with this idea of not saying Tony Todd with hair's name 5 times into a mirror. Seems like the easiest thing to avoid doing in life in general.
Yeah, exactly. All the African American children, they know not to fuck around.
It's true, and for some reason, I also know that so do the Mexican population of LA.
For some reason,
I don't know why I'm following that particular group of people in one of these films, but I am. Yeah,
I am forced to.
And specifically, I guess a subculture of Latino goths as well.
Yes, which
brought me back to my kind of college years when. Which was probably the peak of goth fashion that was going on at that time.
Okay.
And I graduated from high school in 1999, which is when Day of the Dead came out. So I felt like it was really speaking to the fashions of the moment. that shoehorning in of goth characters.
Yes. Yeah. There's plenty of shoehorning going on.
Oh yeah.
So, both of these movies...
And there's only 2 of them. That's a big surprise.
Yeah.
If you don't know this franchise, you would be surprised to learn there is only 2 B-movie sequels.
Not just that, but I was surprised to learn I had no idea that Candyman 3 was direct-to-video.
Okay, well, that was something that I purposefully didn't look up because... It felt like a foregone conclusion that when that episode started, you were going to be like, of course, I don't have any box office for this because it was direct to video.
Yeah.
So I've written the words direct to video in my notes several times, like graffiti scroll over one of the walls.
Not unlike one of the walls
houses
in these movies.
Yeah. So that was my strong suspicion. So I'm glad to see it was confirmed.
You were validated.
I mean, it screamed direct to video. But anyway, we'll get into that more specifically.
But I feel it's more elevated than, say, the direct to video sequels we got in like the House Party movies.
Well, I mean...
Granted, that's the bottom of the bottom of the barrel.
Example.
Yeah.
House Party 4, as we discussed, is one of the worst movies of all time. I don't think we can use that as representatives. I mean...
But what
maybe a better kind of control experiment would be the Hellraiser direct-to-video sequels, which I've only seen one of, the one we covered.
That's the only one I've seen, too. But
Hellraiser
I started
Revelation,
thinking about that Omen 4 Canadian TV movie.
Yeah. Is that our barometer?
I think so. They feel in the same wheelhouse.
Yeah, okay. Oh, for this movie? Yeah. I would agree.
All right.
So are we going to have to include plus or -1 Omen 4 in our ranking? Is that how...
Yeah, speaking of
it's
Omen,
definitely Omen 4 + 1.
Speaking of Omen, we have more work to do on that series because they recently came out with that prequel sequel.
The first Omen?
Yeah. We're going to have to...
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I saw it in theaters.
Yeah.
Not surprising.
Oh, well, I mean, yes. Obviously, yeah. Notice I didn't ask. And that is definitely an Omen movie.
You were so surprised when I told you that, by the way.
I still don't quite believe it. Because I heard nothing about it being part of the Omen franchise.
Oh, that's good.
I love the fact that we're saying, oh no, if we say the name of the title of the titular character, it'll be Bad Omens. But we're fine to sort of use the word Omen repeatedly.
No problem.
Yeah. That's not going to cause any bad omens if we keep saying Omen. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I'm happy to go back to the well on that one.
Yeah. But that's not our task today. Our task today is to rank and declare for these Candy/B movies.
Candy/Man is a good... I don't know if that would summon him quite as much.
Quite as much?
Maybe you get like half a Tony Todd with hair, kind of.
Yeah.
From the waist up,
he sort of Force Ghost appears and says, "Oh, that's Slash. You take that Slash out, I'm coming for you."
But speaking of Slash... we've kind of we've traded one slasher series for another.
Yeah.
But I think we've indicated because this is a very different kind of slasher.
Mm-hmm.
And a very different kind of slasher, both in the sense of the genre and the slasher character, the slasher protagonist.
Yeah, and I guess one of my thoughts as we started out on this, and obviously at some point in the very near future, we'll discuss this, I'm sure, we'll be watching both the original and the remake for our Patreon.
Yeah, that's right.
But I have this vague notion that original Candyman was kind of thought of as a prestige horror movie.
Yes.
But... the series, it's interesting because we are the Everything Sequel podcast, and it seems to me something that whatever it is that makes your movie iconic and last is not actually the original, it's the sequels. Mm-hmm. If the sequels go on, meaning they connect with audiences, they make money, whatever those barometers are, then that helps. Because I don't think people think of that original Candyman as a prestige movie anymore. And
that's 2.
Yeah.
Actually, 3 if you count your introduction, so...
All right.
You're not on thin ice, but you're on ice.
I am on the ice. That's true. Okay.
Oh, on the other hand, how much worse could things get, right?
True.
Matt Gaetz might be Attorney General. How much worse can America get for us?
You'll know we fucked up if Trump says, "I've cloned myself 5 times, and these are the positions I'm putting my clones in."
Just can you imagine that?
Transportation? Why?
Multiplicity with Trump, and it's a horror film. That's what essentially you're talking about.
Yes.
Oh my god.
But my overall point was that this is how important sequels are, because the sequels seems to me to dictate whether or not your movie stays within the culture's consciousness and stays a prestige movie.
Yeah, and the albeit limited anecdotal evidence I have about how the younger generation approach horror franchises is that they don't have that reverence for the original that perhaps our generation, or the generation after us, did. That there isn't that distinction in their mind. They're more interested in overall lore as rather than this distinction between a great original and then a series of diminishing returns.
Right.
So I think that perception of horror series is changing, and I think part of it is just the nature of we're going back. I think I don't know whether this is exactly why we're going back to horror so quickly after having left it with Friday the 13th, but there are a lot of horror series with really strong sequels.
Yeah.
Or at least like really interesting sequels that deserve discussion. And I think that's something that horror has over most other genres in cinema, that you're guaranteed more interesting sequels.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the conventions, the format, which makes it easier to continue.
Right.
Serially.
But they also seem to take
again and again
bigger risks. They try to
definitely
remythologize the beginnings of
yeah.
the origin story and that kind of thing. So they kind of reinvent as they go sometimes. And
yeah.
it may or may not be successful, but at the very least is interesting. Why did you make this choice? What made you do this?
Yeah.
That kind of that spurns discussion.
Yeah.
And keeps people interested, right?
Exactly. You know, you might get a Friday the 13th Part 6 where you turn Jason into Frankenstein and you think, why haven't we done this before? Or you might end up with a turd worm and think, why the fuck did we do this? So
what was that all about?
But you're right. It's this pendulum that is always gonna have more interesting choices than your common or garden sequel.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree.
And there is maybe the thing is as well, it's not just the audience's lack of reverence for the original, but it's also the people who are actually making the movies don't care about what came before them quite as much as other filmmakers do in other film series.
Right.
Like how much they're just trying to get a film made as kind of cheaply as possible without killing anyone while they're making it.
Yeah.
And something about that, I guess that cynicism or that expediency means that they can leave behind, all the baggage of previous movies much more easily.
Yeah.
And yet also, and I found this with this series, they have this is why it speaks to me, because they have a greater respect for continuity.
Yeah, right. Well,
I mean, but even when they remythologize and they retcon, yeah. Well, Friday the 13th, but it always addresses. I mean, it always addresses.
It's always they're always trying to talk about it, but they don't realize the extent to which they fucked that up, and that's even true in the series we're about to tackle.
Definitely, yeah. And I was surprised the determination to make both of these movies fit a coherent timeline.
Yeah.
Rather than just starting again each time, like resetting each time, which they also could have easily done if they'd wanted to. Mm-hmm. There we go.
As I sit and think about this, though, the other thing that talking generally about sequeldom and horror fans and how those things are connected, horror fans feel connected to their horror series in a way that I don't think other fans within other genres do. Those movies belong to them, and they belong to those movies. Mm-hmm. And so there's something within the genre itself that, good or bad, to a lot of fans, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There are so many fans that will go to the mat for Halloween 5.
Yeah,
where that's their favorite movie
of
in
the
the
Halloween
series.
movies. Yeah, 6 even, if you can believe
6
it.
especially.
That'll be like one of those magazine quizzes. Are you a Halloween 5 or a Halloween 6? Answer these questions. Do you hear the faint sound of clown sound
music
effects as you
does it bother you or does it not bother you? It does not bother you? Perhaps you'd like to meet Bernadette. She really likes that movie.
Or see a lawyer bird. Yeah, exactly. That's a really interesting discussion, and I guess to bring it back to the specific series that we're looking at over the next few episodes, there's also the idea of a different demographic of audience. In that this is we can at least say about African American culture.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's made by African, or consulting African Americans, I think is a harder question to answer.
Sure.
But certainly, it might be the white people version of it. But that's as I don't know if you've seen the documentary Horror Noir.
No.
The history of it's a kind of it's produced by Shudder. It's a feature-length documentary that is partly about the representation of black people in horror cinema, and then that kind of turns into a movie about black people making their own horror films, and so it kind of takes it from the sort of racist tropes of 1930s Hollywood cinema all the way through to a movie like Get Out and Jordan Peele and that kind of thing. And
that sounds excellent.
It is excellent. And firstly, Jordan Peele talks about what he observes in African American cinema going when it comes to horror cinema is a greater attachment to the slasher over the victim, and kind of explaining, kind of like trying to like they said
Get those whiteys, get them.
Yeah, if you ask African American theater goers, they'll be like, Freddie, that's my guy. He's my guy. Yeah. And it makes total sense because their victims are these people's oppressors.
Right.
So it must be it's going to satisfy that urge when you see them kill so many white people in the movies. But also that this was one of the only ways that I knew Candyman, open parentheses, 2 close parentheses, Farewell to the Flesh, was because I've not seen any Candyman film.
Not even the original?
No, not even the original.
Okay.
So this is my first experience of a B movie.
Oh.
Now that I've given one.
Yeah, I think you gave one. We're up to 4. We gotta lock it up. They
spend a lot of time in that documentary discussing Farewell to the Flesh. And the kind of consensus was that it might not artistically be a better movie than the original, but politically, conceptually, it is. Mm-hmm. It's more complex.
I got lots to say.
And so I was fascinated. I was fascinated to jump in here because I knew of that background. The only other way I'd heard of Farewell to the Flesh was as a reference in a British sitcom called The League of Gentlemen, which features these 2 recurring characters who hang out at the video store and just go through all the videos going sin, 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 and then when they find a movie they haven't seen, they're like, how many killings in the film? And they do it by killings, and then they kind of pit the movies against each other. So, do you think Species could beat Candyman 2 Farewell to the Flesh in a fight, and that kind of thing? So I had both perspectives in my mind when I was watching these films, both that they're that it's regarded both as one of those dog shit horror sequels, but it's got that other side where there are a lot of black academics who think it has more interesting things to say about race than the original in this franchise. So
I am not a black.
I was playing with both.
I am not a black academic, but I might agree.
Yeah, I think I certainly didn't leave this film thinking that they were wrong in making that assumption.
Yeah,
I've still not seen the original, so I can't.
Well, so I'm the
completely sign off on that opinion, but my strong suspicion is that it's probably right.
This might surprise you. I had seen the original, but I had not seen either one of these sequels.
Well, now that I know one of them's direct to video, that makes more sense for that one.
Sure.
The other thing that's interesting about this set of movies is that they straddle the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It starts in 92.
Yeah.
And then the pre-reboot cycle ends in 99. So this is probably as good a historical document of the 1990s as any film series that you're going to see.
Sure.
Early, mid, and late 90s, all covered.
All there on screen.
All there on screen, yeah.
Yeah. All right, now, I mean, I think it's time to start kind of getting to it. Normally, we ask each other, how'd this go for you? Easy?
Yeah.
To rank and declare?
Ranking incredibly easy. I mean, you always give the game away early when there's only 2 movies.
Sure.
That, it's inevitable. So I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say I don't think I've seen a more significant drop-off in quality between 2 films that we've covered yet. Maybe House Party 3 to 4.
Maybe.
I thought also about I Still Know What You Did Last Summer to I'll always know what you did last summer.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I did have to look up that title. For some reason, it hadn't stuck in my memory from 4 years ago.
It wasn't there right on the front.
I even thought that movie was called I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, and I was like, no, that can't be right, because then what's the second movie called? That makes no sense. And I would say the drop off in quality between Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation. You would say the drop off in quality between Terminator 2 and 3.
I would indeed.
Just to kind of
But even that's not, like, I don't like Terminator 3, but that's not that's not as big a drop off. Even I can recognize that.
So ranking was very easy, and declaration was fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a few moments of pause for both movies.
Okay.
How about you?
Pretty easy. Kind of across the board.
Okay, yeah. I feel mine is too. I tried.
I'd like to hem and haw a little bit more, but if I'm being honest,
why bother?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, it was pretty easy.
Yeah, it was fairly easy.
But
for
I
me.
had one real surprise, like one real big surprise for me within this series that it was just I did not expect, and it kind of floored me in a way that I was like, wow.
The Day of the Dead is about Latin people?
No. I've seen
it's a
Coco.
big surprise to me.
This is...
I thought more than once about Matt Aldrich.
Me too.
I assume
this movie's definitely pre-Coco.
Yeah, I have so many notes that say... former guest and friend of the show, Matt Aldrich, was probably inspired by this movie when he was co-writing the screenplay of Coco.
This must be one of their waypoint movies where they watch this just
completely, yeah.
Get an idea.
They saw how successfully they integrated the idea of Day of the Dead into this horror movie, and they thought, well, that's obviously the next Pixar movie we have to do.
Stakeout.
Yeah,
Stakeout had more success.
Yeah, I know. We had, so I just had a few moments. I had a few surprises. I think the only hesitation I have was about which, and again, this is like a sub-ranking. It doesn't really affect the overall rankings or declarations, but how good are these as horror movies?
Mm.
And I think there were some surprises there.
Okay, it's interesting you say that, because we kind of already floated this idea, but the difference in direction, there's something within that, and something specific within each movie. That one movie seems to have been done well, and the other one is almost trying to do the same exact thing, and I recognized that it's just not there. It's not getting it. It's not doing it in the same way. It's failing where the other movie didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That went a little bit back and forth for me between the two movies, but that's about the only thing that went back and forth, is about how what are these performing as horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
That went back and forth for me a few times, but apart from that, it did seem like a pretty steep drop off between the two movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to it.
Yeah.
Would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Well, I don't think I would be shocked
if we're
if
different.
they weren't the same movie. Yeah, I would be seriously shocked. I know I have this reputation as for my preference for the third in the series, but
not so much this time.
Even I have to draw the line somewhere. This fits into the trilogy exception, though.
That's true.
Which is that if it is the third in the series, but it ends there as a trilogy,
you tend to go for 2.
That's not normally as good. But if they keep going after 3, the third of a series is much better than people give them credit for. But here, I mean, for me, it's Candyman open parentheses 2 close parentheses Carnival all the way.
Carnival?
Yeah, I didn't actually look up whether Carnival did mean farewell to the flesh or not. I know DJ Kingfish says that.
Okay.
As I reported in my quotable, but I don't know if it's a one-on-one it's a 1-to-1 translation there. I should have looked that up.
Well, I'm right there with you. Open parentheses 2 close parentheses. Keep ourselves out of trouble. Farewell to the flesh.
Yeah.
I was delighted by this movie.
Oh, interesting.
Throughout its running screen time. I couldn't believe how much I was drawn to the movie, because when it's successful, it's pretty darn successful. And when it's failing, it's delightfully failing. To me,
it's the mid-90s, so it still has that glow of everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah,
the Clinton years.
Yeah, it would either get a big laugh from me, or I would just sort of revel in something that went shitty. I just love,
and stuff does go shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, I'm glad to hear that. We'll get to declarations in a moment. If to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, I think the movie does have some style issues.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that I think it's underperforming as a horror film a lot of the time.
I think both of these movies, you could say that about.
Sure.
So
yeah, but notably this one that is as high quality elsewhere in the movie.
Yeah.
I do think that's a factor. I also think it pulls a little too much from the sequel playbook at times. Sometimes it feels a bit sequel 101. Aside from that, like politically, thematically, dramatically, this is a rich and stimulating film, and that's what really took me aback.
Yeah, they do something towards the end of this movie where I thought, this movie is trying to say something that I can't believe they're trying to say. This is a fascinating take on, essentially whitewashing.
Completely, yeah. Those dimensions for there, and I see why people have put it in the category of the more complex sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Godfather Part 2.
Yeah.
Or a Babe, Pig in the City.
Right.
They're not necessarily artistically better, although some people would argue Godfather 2 is, but they're more complex. They see the world in a more complicated fashion that's richer and
right
challenges you and makes you question what you previously seen. I mean, the thing that's always said about the Godfather movies is the first movie is myth, the second movie is history.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something similar going on. I mean, I haven't seen the first movie yet, so
there.
I'm not sure, but I definitely saw. I was like,
but I know what you're saying,
and how history is represented. And I mean, this is 1995 as well, so this is early for revisionist Black history.
Yeah,
certainly in cinema. I mean, even in historical writing. And the movie's taking some big swings there
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how we represent Black history in America. That movies even now don't have that level of nuance.
Yeah, agreed.
When they're representing the same issues, but you'd think they would.
You'd think we would have come further, right? That we could be more nuanced.
But you know, in cinema or media in general, where you know we have all these kind of rules and protocols about diversity and representation, but the actual storytelling is not becoming necessarily more complex because of it.
Yeah.
And that's what I find interesting about this movie, which it in a sense is, you know, it's about whitewashing, but it also is whitewashing because it's white authored.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can't look past that, but if you look beyond it, you actually say that there's some huge swings being taken with. I mean, I don't know how much we want to get into this, but I don't think there was a moment in this movie where I ever questioned that Tony Todd with hair was absolutely doing the right thing at all times.
Yep, right.
In a large historical context, everything he did is part of a hero's journey.
Yeah.
And you know, we say this a little bit about slashers, how we say sometimes, you know, Jason is more the hero of the movie.
Well, in that one specific example,
he punishes
right.
Yeah, he punishes the bad people in the movie, but you know, he's in this movie he's meting out justice. Mm-hmm. In this movie, he is not. None of his killings are unjust.
Right.
In a historical sense, and that's, I mean, there's subtlety. There's more subtlety within that, but as a headline, I think that's pretty damn amazing.
Not too shabby, right? Like not for a 1995 sequel.
Yeah.
From a
this is a movie about reparations, essentially.
Yeah, right.
And it takes the side of the repartee.
You could just say the African American.
Well, no, I'm trying to think of like who's the person getting reparations.
Right.
You call them the repartees.
I know what you're doing.
The repairers.
We
are the repairers.
I didn't want to go down the road you are on right now.
No, let's keep going down that road until we end up in a semantic soup. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, then it's clearly both at the top of our lists.
So by default, the third one goes to the bottom.
But not just by default.
Correct.
On its own merits.
Completely on its own merits.
Or lack thereof.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I had one of those moments where it's like, did I put the wrong film on? When it started, because watching it back to back, watching it like from the end credits of Farewell to the Flesh to the beginning of Day of the Dead, it looks like more years have passed than 4. It looks like we've gone through Planet of the Apes and reclaimed civilization, and we're just figuring out how to make movies again.
Well, in the timeline of the movie it has to have been at least 25 years.
Oh, well, that's the other... Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. And I thought... my biggest note... maybe, I don't know. My biggest note for this movie
One of my 145 biggest
pretty
notes.
much. There's not a ton of praise except for the inclusion of the goth community. Really, it was all I liked about it. But the key reason I think why, quality aside, this would be at the bottom anyway, is because you can see that, like, Farewell to the Flesh is clearly building on the mythology that was established in the original movie. Mm-hmm. This seems like we have a pre-existing mythology.
Right.
Let's retrofit Tony Todd with hair into it.
Yeah.
And it's also, and you know, when I say, you know, that Farewell to the Flesh underperforms as a horror film, I'm not even sure if Day of the Dead is a horror film.
Yes, right.
At the end of it, I was like, that was really more of a police procedural.
Procedural, yeah, right.
And I still don't really know why.
Yeah.
I was watching a police procedural, and it turns out now a direct-to-video police procedural.
Well, not just that, because
just compounds the mystery.
It kind of starts off as this police procedural, but then two characters who are not police start doing their own investigation together.
Yeah.
And so it's like a double procedural.
Right. A triple procedural, because you got two sets of
cops,
detective partners.
Yeah, that's true.
So, to represent the three movies, to represent that this is the third movie in the series.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those movies where, I mean, it's direct to video, so essentially the series is already dead before you even make the movie.
Yeah, because there were plans for a fourth movie.
Yeah.
Tony Todd had talked with producers, and there was something in the works, and then, like, the quality of this one, I think, just kind of tanked any hope for that.
Yeah. And the other big difference from the slasher series that we've covered so far, where it's a different actor playing the Jason or the Michael, is the continuity of actor.
Yeah, right.
And I spent the entirety of Day of the Dead surprised and confused as to why Tony Todd
said yes,
returned, and why this wasn't the guy who played not Tony Todd in Jason X doing this role.
Right.
It would have been around about the same time as well. I just couldn't quite believe it. And then I thought about the Hellraiser guy stays.
Yeah.
I think he stayed up to just before the movie we watched.
Which is what, like the 12th one? Like how deep?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what was the straw that broke the camel's back there necessarily. But
I'm done, goddammit.
So I'm surprised, but I'm also a little impressed. I mean, there's a like if Tony Todd's talking to producers about making another of these movies,
yeah,
most actors in his position would be like, why do I have to even do this? Why am I even coming back for this one?
Right.
But clearly that's not the case, and that speaks well of the Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said, and of course this is all speculation, but if you're the actor and you're after you've done even just 2 movies, there's the possibility that Tony Todd just feels like, this is my role.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody else performing this role. It's mine.
I think that's probably it.
So,
and if it's me, if I'm there, I can do something about it. I can fix the mistakes. But that's hard to do when you're not really even in the sort of storyline of the movie.
Yeah, because I know for a fact that even as recent as like 15 years ago, like at conventions and stuff, he'd be like, yeah, I don't like that movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no other conclusion to come to.
Yeah, I mean, one of the funniest notes I read about that movie was, because I think it's, we'll get to it later, but it had a budget. It's listed as a budget of $3 million.
Really? It had a budget?
So it's listed as having a budget as $3 million, but one of the IMDb notes said, yeah, I know it says $3 million, but that's bullshit. They only gave us $1 million. And so there's not even, like, accounting practices. They're like, we really did spend some money on this movie, and the people who made the movie were like, no, you didn't.
Are you telling me that possible embezzlement is going on at Artisan Entertainment?
Maybe.
At Artisan Entertainment, of all places? I mean, I'd never heard of this company before, and I'm sure I'll never hear of it after.
Yeah.
But to think that it's a front for embezzlement, I hope you have proof on your side. That makes total sense.
I'm sure we'll talk a lot about the direction of that movie. But if I recall correctly, I also read a note that said the production was so rushed that the director only had 1 to 2 takes for every scene they shot. And it was like, we have to move on. So I don't know. I
How
found
do you do
myself...
that when your lead actor is covered in bees?
I know, exactly. With bees crawling out of his mouth in one scene.
Maybe that wasn't supposed to happen. They were like, well, we only got 2 takes, so that's it. Moving on.
I really hope that goes right on the first one.
Yeah.
Mercy.
We just stuck a beehive down his throat and then turned the camera on.
Yeah. I think the whole movie was shot in 18 days.
What?
I remember reading that. Yeah.
Oh, well, now you're turning me around on
a little
the
bit.
Quality of the movie.
Because
if you're telling me that this is an 18-day movie,
yeah,
it goes from terrible to not bad.
Yeah, exactly. So when I read those notes, basically the way I feel about these 2 movies, I was so surprised how much I liked a movie I didn't think would be very good in the second one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I was also surprised by how much I kind of started to like a movie I knew was not very good at all.
I think we're pretty much on the same page throughout then. I definitely warmed up to Day of the Dead as it went on. When it started, and bear in mind, this was like, I was watching this on, like, I think I started watching this on the Monday before the election, and finished watching it the Wednesday afterwards. So the prospect of going back to such a shitty movie
with
such all of that going on in the background. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's forever linked in my mind with the end of civilization itself. But aside from that, there was aspects of the movie that I thought were kind of decent exploitation horror tricks in there.
Yeah.
And given that Farewell to the Flesh isn't always, rising to that level,
right?
That's something to kind of just put the 2 movies in perspective as dogshit horror movies, not as what Quentin Tarantino would call coffee table movies. Farewell to the Flesh definitely wins the coffee table movie stakes.
All right, so we've got our ranking, and we have the same ranking.
A self-evident ranking.
Yes. It does seem to me that the manner in which we're talking to Farewell to the Flesh, that we're both thinking of this as a good movie.
Yeah.
I am willing to declare it officially a good movie. Are you?
I'm willing to do that as well. I again, my only caution is that I wish it were a better horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it didn't happen to have been made when CGI effects were in their infancy, but in again taking the broader historical picture, there's not much you could do about that.
Yeah.
And I wish it wasn't as lazy as it was with being a sequel sometimes. But I think the good that it does, and the good that the content of the movie itself, is enough to make it a good movie.
Yeah, for me too.
Like if you told someone what happened in this movie, they'd be like, "Holy shit, that's a good movie."
Yeah.
And it's like, but what happened when the mirror broke? It didn't look so good.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of fell to shit.
Yeah. Did they start adding children in for no reason? Yeah, they did. They did. They started adding in children as the movie went on because it's a sequel. Yeah, they did that.
At one point, an adult tells a child to go get help, and the help that child gets is more children.
More children! At which point that person said, I don't think you understood what I was asking for. I don't think
you had a clue in the world what I was talking about. You're definitely failing that class.
So, but it's interesting because 95, you can see that the language of sequels is known because they're pulling from a lot of imbas conventions that we've identified.
Sure.
but they're doing it self-consciously. Like this is what you do in the sequel.
This is what you signed. Yeah,
There's a play.
We all signed up for this,
playbook.
didn't we?
We all knew eventually our cast would be replaced by children. Okay, so we just start it now,
We're doing
and then
it early.
We'll gradually filter out all the adults from this
As
story.
it turns out, we're not going to have a lot of these. We got to go to children now.
Yeah, but there's definitely a playbook. Like it feels like, there's a sequel Bible there somewhere that people are pulling from as early as 1995, and that was interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, the final question. It feels as though we've talked about this movie in one specific way.
Yeah.
Day of the Dead. But then we kind of gave a new perspective based on length of shooting and the actual budget. I mean, is that enough to make it a good movie? Maybe
not, but this happens every time we watch one of these movies, because you're a direct-to-video apologist, or at least you present yourself as a direct-to-video apologist.
I mean, we've only had really the one example, right? Just The Omen.
Well, we've had Tremors, we've had Omen, we've had Into the Blue.
Oh, that's right.
2.
Okay, yeah, I am an apologist.
We've seen a few by this.
You caught me.
I wish it was that easy with like Trump and fascism.
But you're the same.
Oh,
you know like all of those movies.
I am a fascist. Well, this is what I'm saying. It's like all my reservations when put in the kind of production context that you always describe.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, and you're right to. That's what film criticism is, right? We're only judging how well the movie can be performed based on the production conditions in which it was made.
Sure.
If one of those is out of whack, then you're not judging the movie fairly. So I'm sympathetic to all of those arguments, but it still feels like a uniformly terrible movie.
No, I agree. I don't think it's enough to call this movie good. It was enough.
It was enough
for me to warm to the movie in a way that I didn't think I would, and there were aspects of it that were so bad that it got genuine laughs out of me. So
for sure, yeah. I laughed a lot.
In this dark time, that was enough to make me like the movie more than I normally probably would.
And I genuinely warmed up to it. I say that without irony. Me too. As the movie went on, I thought, you know what, this movie's turning me around a little bit. And I really, with the opening, when you realize that actress isn't going to die in the first scene and she's going to be with you for the entire movie. You will go, oh my god, it's fucking 90 more minutes of this coming up. But then, about an hour in, you go, and you know something's happening, and I'm mellowing towards
this.
Right. But it's also partly it's like tuning your brain into watching exploitation rather than elevated horror.
Right.
If you can switch that dial in your head, flick that switch, it improves because I think we talked about this when we did Into the Blue too, but there's that kind of limbo, that no man's land in every direct-to-video movie where it could become a softcore porn.
Right, yes.
And then it chooses not to. But there's this and you see that the moment in here is so clear. It's like if this sex scene goes on for another 10 minutes,
we're fucked.
You're in a softcore porn movie. But if it stops now, we can get on with the rest of the movie.
With the rest of the movie, yeah.
But they do not miss a female nudity opportunity at any point in the movie.
No, that's the thing. It's
a different kind of filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, there's a moment in that movie where you're clearly seeing supposed to be her mom's breasts. And you're like, oh, so am I supposed to be titillated right now? Because her throat's also slashed and there's blood spilling all over those tits. What is it you want me to do right now with this? I don't think
what do you want me to, why are you showing me this? Yeah.
What is going on?
Yeah. And, the fact that that's a recast as well.
Yeah, right.
they're literally assuming that you're not looking at her face. Because if you looked at her face, you go, oh, that's not the same actress who played this character in the last movie. So they're going, no one will notice, the tits will distract them. They should have done that with Crispin Glover in Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, right.
They should have had that guy with the Crispin Glover mask with a big pair of fake tits.
Big titties. Well, I remember when...
Where was Crispin Glover? Crispin, what? Who? What? What's going on?
When the heroine first walks into the bathroom, she looked enough like the mom that I said, my note was, is that supposed to be her mom? And then they say it directly like 60 seconds later.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so I said, just next to my notes, I said, turns out it is supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing. The other big difference between these two movies is respect for the audience's IQ. Very different.
Yeah, right.
Very, very. They see their audiences very differently in terms of mental age.
Right.
So I think it's a bad movie, but did it win me around a little when I thought it wouldn't? Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. We're in lockstep then for the series so far. We'll get to our Patreon at some point, but
it sounds like Patreon, but it sounds like you're more of a flesh head than I am. I do, because I have some reservations.
I was
not
delighted
many, but I do.
By that movie, and I was surprised how drawn to it I was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's smart, not like people say sequels are, to paraphrase Fredo from The Godfather 2. No, I mean, I left going, that was a thoughtful, intelligent film.
Yeah.
I guess, we can talk, you can put that in the historical context of what's going on in horror films, like Silence of the Lambs comes out, and people go, hey, you don't need to pretend to be stupid anymore, you can be as, like, intellectual as you want in your horror movie. You'll win an Oscar, right? You'll fucking...
Turns out it elevates it. You're going to win Oscar for everything. Picture, director, actor, actress, writing. You'll sweep.
You're literally like, there was this whole audience of people who wouldn't watch horror movies. Now they will. So,
right.
Set the bar high, guys.
Go nuts.
No more lowest common denominator. And then by the end of the 90s, something apparently changed. We had the opposite.
Because we have Day of the Dead.
Because, we have...
And it's funny when you think that Day of the Dead comes out in 99, because 99 is kind of like 1982. It's one of these prestige years where people talk about a high point in film.
Yeah.
And so when you watch this amongst the 99 movies, you think, well, there's two ends of the spectrum in every year, aren't there?
Yeah. It's also pre and post Scream.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other difference between these two films. And
I'll almost even give Day of the Dead credit for not trying to glom on to any aspect of Scream in any way, shape, or form. Both in style, content.
I don't know if they knew that, though. I don't know. I have a feeling they were trying Scream-like jokes and they were failing.
You think?
A little bit.
All right.
Once or twice.
We'll get
but
there.
I thought that, the other legacy of Scream is the license to be more popcorny.
Yeah.
Which, you need to be Wes Craven to keep a handle on.
Sure.
And still make it a good movie, but I think it reminded people, it's like, oh, well, especially after Silence of the Lambs and maybe like Interview with the Vampire, where it all gets very, very emo.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, hey, you can just make a fun,
right,
right, Evil Dead style horror. You can just make people laugh. There's nothing wrong with that.
You can scare them and make them laugh and
do stupid things.
Yeah, do dumb stuff and chew your popcorn with glee.
Yeah. So I think it learned that lesson. It didn't, not the postmodern comedy lesson, maybe not so much.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah, we will. I guess that's a missing piece of the puzzle for us. We've already talked about Scream a little bit in a special episode, a very special episode.
Yeah.
Dudley Cough. And we did...
a requel chat.
That's right, requel. We talked about Scream 5?
Yeah.
There's been one since then, hasn't there?
6.
Yeah. And I presume they're going to... I think they're going to keep making them, aren't they?
No, there's another one coming out next year.
Okay.
Coming out soon.
Well, then we probably should wait, then, shouldn't we?
We could go original. We could go the original trilogy. Or I guess you'd have to go the first 4, maybe? I don't know. Because those are all the Wes Cravens.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Might be a nice sidecar for our Freddy coverage, then.
Interesting.
Or is it irresponsible just to do Wes Craven movies for about 6 months? Probably.
Well, he's only
Probably going to alienate some parts of the audience. If you don't like Wes Craven, there's nothing for you for another 7 months.
Well, he's only involved... He's not involved in every Nightmare movie.
Oh, that's true.
Certainly not as a director.
True. Not as a director. It's like 1, 3, and 6, I think, isn't it?
Well, he didn't direct the third one.
Oh, he didn't, but he co-wrote a draft that...
Well, I kind of feel like he came back in some aspect, but I'd have to look it up.
I think he ended up getting...
But New Nightmare and the first one are all his, for sure.
Yeah. But this is... Speaking of which, this is our first... Tony Todd with hair is our first kind of... living, breathing, talking slasher.
Yeah, right.
Well, he's not living and breathing. I mean, he is technically dead, but he's he's forming sentences, which is new for us.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen that yet in a slasher.
Yeah, we don't see that a lot.
So, it's very different, and I'm excited to talk about the legacy of that as well, because that it's coming from it's a different kind of slasher character.
Mm-hmm.
Which there's precedent for with Freddy, but Freddy's kind of we'll get there, but Freddy's kind of still disgusting in the way that Jason and Michael is.
Right.
But there's really nothing disgusting about Tony Todd with hair.
No,
he's the most attractive.
He's just a good-looking man
with a slightly too modern haircut in Day of the Dead, but I'll let it pass.
All right, fine. All right, anything left for you before we sign off?
No, I'm excited to get into the weeds on Farewell to the Flesh. There's conceptually a lot to talk about.
There is, yeah. I'm excited as well. We got plenty to talk about. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's our Candyman. Oops.
We have activated the curse at some point in this episode.
Well,
between us. Hey, wait! If you do it, if you alternate,
yeah,
does
I think
that count?
we're okay. I think we're okay.
Okay. So as long as we're, but then we'll end up saying 5 in total anyway, won't we?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I might have got there, so I could be in some trouble.
And they never say this, but it does the rule seems to be 5 times in succession.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
And into a mirror, which on Zoom, which is kind of kind of a grey area.
I am looking at myself.
I'm looking at myself also, which is starting to worry me now, because I think the ghost world might interpret this as a mirror.
Not a mirror. Not a mirror.
No, it's a totally different thing. I can see myself, yeah, but it's not a mirror. I don't use it as a mirror.
You were murdered when you were a slave a long, long time ago. You don't understand technology.
Things have changed. We're not racist anymore. We elected a non-racist president. We totally let a woman of color become president, despite what you may have heard in the ghost realm.
Just imagine in the ghost realm, like one hook, one hand opening the paper. These motherfuckers.
We're not pitching sequels yet, but one of our sequels could conceivably begin with Tony Todd with hair in the afterlife reading the New York Post the day after Trump gets reelected. He's like, I'm back baby.
In business.
Bring me my hook.
Oh, God damn it. Where's my honeycomb?
Do you think he... Well, okay, yeah, I've got questions about beekeeping. The afterlife, too. Does he store the bees internally?
I don't know.
Or is he one of those crazy beekeepers who's just been stung so many times they don't even need a hazmat suit anymore? Yeah.
All right, friends. Well, now it's up to you. Which of these Candy/Man movies do you prefer? Is it Farewell to the Flesh or Day of the Dead? You know what to do. Let us know by all means. Find us on Facebook. Find us on Instagram. Do not find us on X. But
especially not now.
Ban it. Ban it from your hearts and minds.
It's basically, at some point, X will become an internal government communication.
Mm-hmm.
It'll effectively be the White House website by the time these 4 years are over.
Did you see Stephen King's post?
No.
It was...
What did he say?
It was a picture of Elon Musk essentially dressed as the First Lady. And then Musk immediately banned him from X.
Yeah. That's how it's going to be from now on. Everyone's going to what I originally thought was called Blueski, but I think it's pronounced Blue Sky. Which is an alternative to X, which I've not quite accepted yet because it is such a shameless rip-off aesthetically of 2008 original recipe Twitter. I almost, even though I know that going there will be surrounded by people who have left X because they're too nice to be there. So it's going to be a bunch of nice people, even though I know that the community will be
better,
wholesome. I think the people behind it are just mercenary in how they've copied the look of 2008 Twitter.
All right.
So I'm not quite. We might have an account on Blueski / Blue Sky at some point, but right now, on principle, I'm holding back because, as someone who occasionally creates, to see plagiarism of that magnitude is, you know, in the words of Frank Pentangeli, I take it as an insult.
Very good, then. You heard it here first, everyone.
You did. Or last. People have been joining Blue Sky since about 3 weeks ago. Okay. So I'm the last person to talk about it.
Or you can start a thread to continue on. If you know how to do that, then do that. Finally, you can send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. That's it. All right. When you hear us next, we will be back. We're talking to Farewell to the Flesh.
You sound like you have bees in your mouth, sir.
For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Schatz here of the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
On the Day of the Dead, they remind us that death is sweet. Personally, I like to take a bite out of the death. Then you get the women, then you get the power.
You know how I was completely assured that she was a bad actor in that moment? Because when he said, take a bite out of the dead, she didn't have a look like, huh?
Yeah, right.
No question of that.
Also, I mean, obviously, I'm a white guy, a white British guy who knows nothing. But if you go to the barrio in LA, does it look like 1930s Panama? in the way that it does in this
Yeah.
movie? I don't think so.
You know what I thought it looked like? I thought it looked like Predator 2 Los Angeles.
Predator 2 Los Angeles. How far are we from or to Predator 2 Los Angeles right now?
Well, we're well on our way.
I think we're well on our way
We're
to
starting
Predator.
to it, for sure.
But we're probably Alien versus Predator Los Angeles by this point.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We will be back.
I'm not going to say anything because you keep putting whatever I say into the episode.